the great former Dawg. Rodrigo, you've been a part of many season openers for Georgia in the past. You certainly know the excitement that Georgia fans have when the season begins. And today, for the most part, that excitement, I think Georgia fans left satisfied. 45-7 is the final. Georgia handles business against an overmatched Marshall Thundering Herd today. Rodrigo, what did you see from Georgia in this game today?
Yeah, I saw a lot of really encouraging signs from Georgia today, really in all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams. I think there are a lot of good signs that we saw. Obviously, Gunner in his first start at home at Sanford Stadium, getting to play in front of the home crowd. I thought that he did some really good things, especially with his legs today, so that was really encouraging. On the defense, you got to see some new faces flying around and making tackles and making names for themselves on the defensive side of the ball today. And then on special teams as well, we got a blocked punt in our first game of the season. So anytime that you can have game-changing plays in special teams, that's going to be a really good indicator for your success for your team in a season. So saw a lot of really good things in all three phases, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to continue to do to find ways to win throughout the rest of this season.
And Rodrigo, I think I bring up a very interesting point. As a specialist yourself, you know how much Kirby Smart craves those big plays on special teams. KJ Bolden getting a punt block. It's been a while since we've seen Georgia do that, but getting that punt block today, I'm guessing certainly on the sideline we saw evidence of this, maybe in the locker room too, that Kirby Smart may end up celebrating that as much as anything that happened today. He loves those big-time, game-changing plays in special teams, and being a part of the special teams units for Georgia for as long as you were, you probably know that about as well as anybody, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that Coach Smart is going to be very excited to rewatch that tape when they get back to watching film next week. I'm sure that's going to be one of the highlights of this game when we go over the quote-unquote good, bad, and ugly tape. So I'm sure he's going to be very excited for that. It was really great to see, especially someone like KJ Bolden, who, you know, we all know is going to be a big playmaker for the team on defense, that he is giving his maximum effort and his maximum intensity on special teams as well. Just to see your really key players are going to give that kind of effort on special teams is going to be a really good sign for this team. So it was great to see that. They took advantage of the spread punt protection. We had kind of the end of the formation. A guy crashed down because we loaded up on the inside of the formation, and that left a short edge for KJ Bolden to just come screaming off and get that block punt. So that was really great to see. I know that Coach Smart is going to be super excited for that. And, I just look forward to seeing the special teams continue to make an impact the rest of the season.
The fact that Gunner Stockton showed off his wheels, how much of an extra weapon is that for the Georgia offense when you do have the running quarterback, when the opposing defense has to consider that? We saw Stockton get 2 rushing touchdowns today, had a chance at maybe another, but it gives, in my mind, the opposing defense so much more to think about. What did you think about the dimension we saw with Gunner Stockton's legs here today?
Yeah, I thought that Gunner made a really big impact with his legs today, and it makes me think about a few years ago when we had a guy named Stetson Bennett running the offense, and Stetson was also very adept on the ground and added that extra layer to the Georgia offense where the defense has to respect your quarterback in the run game. And we saw Gunner had 2 touchdowns on zone reads where the defense is committed to the fact that they think that the Gunner is going to hand the ball off to the running back, and then Gunner decides to pull it, and then he's got untouched path going into the end zone on 2 separate occasions. So, the ESPN broadcast was mentioning that they felt like Gunner's wheels was an underappreciated part of his game, but I think that going forward in the rest of the season, it's not going to be underappreciated anymore. Everybody that watches this game and watches this tape is going to see that Gunner is a legitimate threat on the ground, and it definitely is going to, I think, open up the Georgia offense in a way that we haven't seen since a few years ago when we had Stetson running the show. So I'm very excited for that, and hopefully he can continue to make an impact with his legs and keep defenses honest and keep our offense at an advantage going forward.
You see the numbers, by the way, on your screen for Gunner Stockton here today. It was a workmanlike effort through the air. Obviously, the Zachariah Branch touchdown throw kind of puts a little extra shine on that. For the most part, maybe not as efficient through the air today as maybe Georgia would have liked to have been. But, Rodrigo, I think you bring up a great point in comparing him to Stetson Bennett. In some ways, I think that Stetson and Gunner are different kinds of runners. But in 2022, Stetson Bennett had 10 rushing touchdowns. Theoretically, that's 70 points. And Georgia didn't play very many close games in 2022. But in a year in which you expect to play a handful of close games, an additional 70 points coming because of your quarterback and what he can do on the ground, Rodrigo, that could be the difference between, at least one win, if not, maybe even more than that. When you're getting that kind of scoring boost from what your quarterback is doing on the ground, I just think that makes close games easier to win.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we saw the value in having a quarterback that can be efficient with his legs in another game that just ended in the Alabama and Florida State game, where Florida State's Thomas Castellanos was very effective on the ground as well and gave Alabama fits throughout the game. And I think was a difference maker in why FSU was able to come away with a win to beat Bama to open the season. So, I think all of us Georgia fans, if we're going to go and see that game, that should hopefully get us a little bit excited that the fact that we also have a very good quarterback who's adept at running the ball, that could present some problems for Alabama's defense when we match up with them in a few weeks. So, very excited to see Gunner do what he did today, and hopefully that will continue when we get to some of our one of our tighter matchups when we get here in a few weeks later in the season.
And Rodrigo, to bring you back in on this, obviously a point there about the Georgia defense. In addition to that, this is a unit that had stated explicitly throughout the offseason they wanted to be good against the run. Now, admittedly, there's only so much you can prove against Marshall. We all understand that, but that's also the only team you could play today. That was the team on your schedule. So to see Georgia come out and shutting down the run game, really allowing nothing on the ground for the most part to Marshall, how much of a boost is it for Georgia to, at least in week one, as they step into the season, eventually stepping up in competition? But how big is it for Georgia to be able to go out and, at least for 1 week, accomplish one of its stated goals? You would imagine that must be a bit of a boost for the Georgia defense overall.
Yes, I have to imagine it will be a boost for the defense. I had the stats pulled up, so the defense gave up 207 total yards today, but only 78 rushing yards. So definitely nice when you can keep that rushing total under triple digits. I know that that's a goal for Coach Smart, as he always wants to keep the opponent under 100 rushing yards in a game. And when you can do that, you feel like you've got a really good chance to win, and your defense is playing winning football. So I have to imagine the defense is going to definitely have some positive to take away. I know that Coach Smart is going to hold the defense to an extremely high standard himself. Coach Lanning, the whole defensive staff, they're going to hold this team to a high standard because that's what they have to do if they're going to continue to have success when we get to some more superior competition in a few weeks. But I think there were definitely a lot of encouraging signs. As a fan that we just had on had mentioned, there were some guys that we hadn't really heard a whole lot about before, finally getting some action, getting some opportunities, and they made some names for themselves today. So it was really encouraging to see some of the signs that we saw from the defense, and hopefully they continue to shut down the run and maintain control of the line of scrimmage and set the tempo throughout the rest of the season.
You see the tail of the tape there in terms of what both these offenses were able to do. Obviously a huge imbalance in favor of Georgia, which is exactly the way we like it. It certainly seems like that Georgia, once again, very sound in the kicking game here right now. What do you think about Georgia specialists here? Obviously, injury-wise, did not get to see Brett Thorson today. We've grown to appreciate what Drew Miller is able to do. Didn't have to punt today a lot, which you're always glad to see. But also, once again, the long lineage of great Georgia place kickers, it certainly seems like that's continuing with Peyton Woodring, is it not?
Yes, I believe so. I want to give a shout-out to Peyton Woodring, Bo Gardner, and to Brett Thorson as well. They were all preseason All-SEC. Those guys have all done some really good things for the University of Georgia in their careers, and I think that they're all going to do really special things again this season. Like you said, we didn't get to see Brett Thorson or Thor. He's not back yet. The broadcasters were talking about how he's been punting, but he hasn't been cleared for contact yet. But it sounds like he's almost back, and he's almost ready to go to make an appearance for the Red and Black again. So I'll be very excited to see him back out on the field. But Georgia continues to have really high-quality specialists. It's been really great to see. Peyton's done really great things the last 2 years, and I think he's going to continue to do really well this season. Bo's been rock solid for us, and Drew, obviously filling in last year for Brett, did well, and he also did well again today in his limited appearances. So I think it needs to continue to be a strong suit for the University of Georgia to have quality specialists and special teams across the board, and that can definitely be a difference maker for us this season.
How about what we saw from other SEC teams here today when it comes to Texas going to Ohio State and losing, and Arch Manning not looking particularly strong in his debut? And as you said, Thomas Castellanos for Florida State, he sort of called his shot there. He felt like he would be set up for success against Alabama. A lot of folks thought that was pretty premature, but as it turned out, it was actually prophetic. It seems like Tommy kind of knew what was coming there in that game. Both Alabama and Texas, a couple of the what we think of as standard bears in the SEC, neither of those teams look particularly good today. Certainly a shocking upset in Tallahassee, and obviously a disappointing performance from Texas up in Columbus against the reigning national champs. What did you think about that?
Yeah, we had some very interesting outcomes for those games with Texas and Ohio State. I think that everyone was eagerly anticipating what Arch Manning would do with his first season, kind of being the guy for Texas, and definitely wouldn't say that he kind of lived up to the hype. A little bit underwhelming. I mean, he did all right. He kind of came alive in the fourth quarter, made a few plays to kind of keep them in the game, but. I definitely think that if Texas is going to do what everyone thinks they're going to do this year, he's going to have to play better. But kudos to Ohio State. Their defense played lights out. Their offense did just enough to get the win. Obviously, being at home in the horseshoe, I think, played a factor as well. But, good teams playing against each other early in the season, you never know what you're going to get. And shout out to Ohio State for playing well enough to get the win there. And then as we talked about earlier, Florida State getting the win over Alabama. Thomas Castellanos, he's a very confident player, and he backed it up today with a big performance. And then I also look at another team that is going to be coming up later in our schedule that I think a lot of fans are going to have circled is Tennessee. And Tennessee, hung a lot of points on Syracuse today. I know that Syracuse had a very strong season last year, and I think that there were some pretty decent expectations for their program for this year as well. But Tennessee, I think, has kind of put a stop to that pretty quickly. And Tennessee is trying to make some noise and let people know that, hey, even though we lost our starting quarterback to the transfer portal, we're here and, we're about our business and we're going to be a serious threat in the SEC this year.
Rodrigo, before we say goodbye to you, I want to get a final thought from you coming up. Let me squeeze in one more with you before we get to your final thought, which you heard from Randy a moment ago. Other callers will mention this too, that, hey, sometimes and the word that gets used a lot is vanilla in a game like this. And I won't pretend to be an expert on what Georgia's game plan was, but to my eyes, and this is what I'm curious to hear about from you, I felt like we saw some interesting wrinkles from Georgia today in terms of how it tried to ignite its running game. I felt like you saw tight ends in motion, for instance. I felt like you saw a lot of movement where, oftentimes you kind of call that eye candy. I felt like you got a lot of eye candy from Georgia pre-snap and kind of kept the defense spread more lateral. And I thought that created a lot of opportunities for Georgia to run the ball today. I thought there was actually a good bit of that. I won't pretend to be, as I said before, a game planning expert necessarily, but I definitely thought you got some of that from Georgia, trying to be as creative as it could with the wrinkles that it was establishing.
Yeah, I think about some of the best offensive minds in the NFL right now. You have guys like Sean McVay, who I believe the statistic is something like pre-snap motion on over 70% of their offensive plays. And that can do a lot for you. You can give your quarterback indicators and give your quarterback more information about what to expect from the defense. If you send a player in motion pre-snap or you shift your formation and the defense doesn't respond, then you might be thinking, oh, they're going to be in this certain type of defense. Or if you move players around and the defensive players move and match them on the formation, then you can expect that they're playing another type of defense. And so giving those pre-snap motions and that pre-snap movement, I think, is going to do a lot to help Gunner take in as much information as possible to set up the offense for success. And so even though it might have felt vanilla just because we saw zone reads or speed option or quick ins, quick outs, whatever the case may be, that's all building blocks for getting to the next tier of the offense when you have, I guess you want to say, more complex route running, more complex route combinations for the offense. You have to start somewhere. You have to build your way up to the final form of the offense, I guess you could say. So while it might have felt vanilla today, it was effective. And at the end of the day, if your offense is effective, if your offense is moving the ball, if you're minimizing turnovers, which you had 0 turnovers today, so check that box. If you're minimizing turnovers, if you're minimizing negative plays and keeping the chains moving, then that's all you can ask for as a fan.
Rodrigo, we love your analysis. It's been great to have you part of the show today. Any final thought from you before we say goodbye about what you've seen from Georgia or college football overall in what has already been a very busy week one?
Yes, it has been a very hectic week one. Even going back to week 0, we had a few interesting results from week 0 as well. I'm just going to be interested to see who's going to step up on the Georgia defense and become the big-time threat pass rushers. We had 2 very big departures last year, and Jalen Walker and Micah Williams both going on to the NFL, and I expect that they're going to do really good things as well. And so I'm going to be really interested to see who steps up and fills the gap for the Georgia defense, and it's going to become those household names that we can expect to affect the passer and get in the backfield and affect these SEC quarterbacks, because that's going to be a big component to our defense having long-term success this year.
Rodrigo, love your analysis. Certainly appreciate that. Thank you so much for being a part of our DawgNation Postgame show live here today from the UGA bookstore, and we'll certainly look for our chance to speak to you again very soon. Great stuff here today.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys so much for having me on today. Go Dogs.